Gomes,
Here.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Here.
Councilmember Richard Best. I do not see he has joined yet.
Okay.
Councilmember Julie Berbrick,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Here.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Okay. If you all stand, please, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
My mic went off. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And as we had discussed at last meeting, I'm going to ask if anybody has a conflict of interest regarding any item that is on the agenda, the proposed agenda. Okay, I don't see anybody. So I would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda, including the approval of the minutes and the consent. Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, already we have a motion to approve the agenda, and it's been seconded. Any amendments to the motion, questions or comments? Okay,
I do want to
Oh,
point
yes, go
out,
ahead.
Mayor, that Councilmember Richard Best has joined the meeting
Okay.
while we were conducting the Pledge of Allegiance.
okay.
Or
Good.
perform.
Thank you, okay. Alrighty, so Madam Clerk, we're ready for the, I don't know. Hold on, people on the Zoom, we are having some challenges on this end, maybe regarding the recording.
It's okay, you can keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, I need you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
To take the
Do
roll
roll.
call for the
Yes.
motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Here.
Councilmember Julie Berbrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Jill Valerius,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay. So the agenda. Study. So who from that consultant group is going to start? Do I see a hand? Okay. Already? Yep. There. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everybody. Unless, I don't think, is Brad there? I can
Yes.
jump in, but.
Yes.
There you go. Okay, good to see you. Hi, this is Shanna Suspan. I'm with AgriVet Consulting. Thank you for having us back. I think we were before your body a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're happy to be back today, and sort of spend a little more time on our presentation and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you all have the packet in front of you, and I'm kind of starting on page 68 of 160,
Okay.
the project overview.
Mm-hmm.
And really our discussion tonight is to just set the stage and provide an introduction to the overall method and scope of work for the community and economic analysis that would be available to you if you decide to move forward with a petition for annexation.
Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit today about the purpose of the project. I'm going to turn it over to Heather at that point and talk a little bit about the history of annexation in Palmer. And then we'll kind of dive into the methodology of the study, really spending a bit of time on the study areas, which we do want to get your thoughts on this evening and allow our economics team to proceed with the economic study using the study areas that we put forward so far. And Heather will talk a little bit more about that. And then on the economic analysis, Jonathan will dive in and share some of the methodology related to that. And then Tanya will talk about the community outreach component.
Okay.
I kind of introduced the team just by talking about what everybody was going to do, but the next page in your packet just kind of gives our official titles and roles. Again, I'm Shanna with ActiveBack. I'm helping to oversee the study and probably focus a little bit more on the economic side of the work. Jonathan King, who's on the screen, is leading the economic study with Michelle Humphrey doing a lot of the financial modeling and data modeling. Heather Stewart, who's on the screen, is going to be the project manager over all of the components of the project, and she's kind of the day-to-day contact working really closely with Brad. Tanya Iden, again, is leading kind of the public participation side, and Gary Greenberg is doing a lot of the data, heavy lifting, and the mapping work. And then we have a few other analysts at AgniVec supporting the project as well. Okay, so I'll move to page 71 of your packet. And really just kind of, again, make sure to highlight this is the beginning of the process. And really it's a study, right? So it's really a study of the community and economic components that are impacted by annexation. But it is to lay the groundwork for a successful annexation by the city of Palmer. You know, I don't think you all would take on something like this just to study it for fun. And the idea is to move forward with some type of annexation. But the process we're engaged in is really on the study component. Annexation would affect your governance, your finances, the way that you provide services. And then if done right, it would really, you know, hope to improve those roles and functions, particularly in the newly annexed areas. So our study is intended to identify those lands outside of the current city limits that would be most likely successful in an annexation and contribute to a successful annexation. Really taking a look at some of the regulatory, financial, or service provision issues that should be addressed before making any annexation petition. And really inform and have a conversation with current and future citizens about what annexation means and how it could really affect them. The next page, page 72, is just kind of a simple slide, an overview of what is annexation. It's really a legal process. The State Local Boundary Commission is a state entity that's responsible for making the ultimate determination on annexation, and Heather will talk a little bit more about that. But it really means that you're going to expand your territory of your city boundary. Those newly added residents and properties receive or will be eligible for city services, pay taxes, be required to abide by land use and other rules and laws within the city, and they become new city voters within your community. Page 73 talks about, you know, just generically, why do cities actually annex land? And I think it's kind of helpful to pause on this slide a little bit, and Heather will dive into a little bit more about the goals for Palmer, just based on your past processes involved in annexation. But, you know, it's a combination of really economic and financial considerations, as well as, you know, how you want to manage the future of your community, right? So it's both economic and non-economic reasons. So if there are particular areas that are realizing a lot of growth and can impact your community and your existing residents in potentially negative ways, having the ability to be involved in the planning and the service provision of those areas can be beneficial. It's also important to find out kind of how much it's going to cost to annex particular areas and how much revenue you're going to be able to generate from those areas. And it may still be that in certain areas it's not cost effective to annex, but there may be other non-economic reasons that it still makes sense to see if you can bring those areas into your community. So again, we're really trying to help lay the groundwork and help you understand what are the financial and economic considerations of these particular study areas if you annex them, and then what are sort of those non-economic factors that go into considering annexation. So that's kind of an introduction. I think at this point I will turn it over to Heather, and she'll take it from here, diving in a little bit more into Palmer's sort of goals for annexation and history and the study areas, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi.
So moving to page 74 of the packet, we have a slide on Palmer's goals for annexation. These were taken from the 2010 annexation strategy document. They were recommended in that document based on all of the conversations that were had with the city and residents through that process. And these include: 1, to promote orderly, high-quality development and the cost-effective extension of services where and when warranted. 2, to sustain a desirable quality of life in and around Palmer. And 3, to ensure a sustainable tax base along with long-term economic viability, fiscal health, and natural environment in Palmer. So these are the city's goals as we have found them in the previous annexation-related planning documents, but they the cities to amend or update as you choose. But they do provide a foundation for why the city would want to look at annexation. So moving to page 75, we have a slide that looks at some of the history of annexation in Palmer starting in 2006. And wanted to highlight a few things that are still in some people's memories. For more recent residents might not have this background. But we want to make sure that we have a general familiarity and learn from some of the past experiences. So we started with 2006, which was the last update of the Palmer Comprehensive Plan. AgriVec led the consultant team for that. And that plan, as well as the earlier 1999 version of the Palmer Comprehensive Plan, does specify annexation as a tool that the city can use in order to achieve or maintain its vision of quality of life for the city. Also in the 2006, the city engaged Northern Economics to do an annexation study similar to this one. And Jonathan King was one of the team members on that, having worked for Northern Economics at the time. Gary Greenberg at the Alaska Map Company also was part of that team and did the maps on that one. So we have some longevity. The comprehensive plan at that time recommended a phased approach to annexation and really represents a long-term vision in the way that it talks about annexation. And the 2006 annexation study follows that. It looked at a set of phased areas moving from areas closer to the city, existing city boundaries, out to the boundary of the water sewer service area, which it was recommended at the time to look at the water sewer service area as a maximum long-term growth boundary that eventually, many years from now, the city might get to if it makes sense. But it was a way of putting some boundary around the study so that they could do the economic study at the time and figure out what would make sense or not make sense. The study areas in that study are much bigger than the ones that we have identified for the study that we're doing now. And we'll get into that later as we get into the methodology, but that's one thing to highlight. In 2007, the city of Palmer did take what they learned from all of these and, put together an annexation petition. It was never submitted to the state, to the local boundary commission, because it failed to pass the city council. The city council has to vote, to submit the petition to the local boundary commission, and that city council at that time did not, have a passing vote for that. So in 2010, the city again engaged a team that included AgUbec and Northern Economics. Jonathan King was a part of that. I was also a part of that team. And that study focused on understanding what would be successful in an annexation from a more community-based approach. So we did do some economic analysis, but I don't think it was quite as robust as what we're doing today. And that team at that time did spend a lot of time talking with people in the greater Palmer community, so people inside the city and outside of the city, to understand what are your concerns about annexation, what can the city do better in the future if they want to go down this path again, and what makes sense generally in terms of which areas to focus on. So all of that is a really good resource, I think, for us moving forward. So over that time, the city has made a few changes that do fulfill some of the recommendations of the 2010 strategy report. And Brad can probably talk about those in a little bit more detail, but they include some zoning adjustments. And now we find ourselves in 2020 doing this study, as we just mentioned. If at the end of this study, the city will then come together, and city leadership, you will have to decide if you are going to put together a petition and which areas you're going to include in that petition. At that point, they're not study areas anymore, but right now we're just studying them. And for all of the people who are interested in this study and process, we'll get into it a little bit more in the methodology, but I do want to highlight that we do have a project website that is live right now. It is at palmerannexstudy.org, and you can go there, learn more about the project. We'll continue updating it throughout the project, and you can also sign up for project updates by email. So I wanted to highlight that. So then going to page 77 of the packet, we broke out the overall process into 4 phases, and we are in sort of the crossover between phase 1 and phase 2. So we had the comprehensive plan in 2006. We have the annexation goals identified in the 2010 strategy, which you're free to update. We are now performing another economic analysis, and through this study also identifying any needed policy changes that may have happened either before or after an annexation. The idea is that through this process we would identify feasible areas for annexation, and through this process we'll also be engaging with residents to address concerns. But even once the city decides to prepare a petition for annexation, or if the city decides to prepare a petition for annexation, there is more room there for engagement as the petition is drafted and a transition plan is created. The transition plan is an important piece because it does give more direction over how and when land use designations would be made and city services extended and city fees and taxes levied on the newly annexed territories. And the more that, people have an understanding of what's to come and those expectations are fulfilled in a timely manner, the smoother the overall process will be. So that's why that is required. The third phase, once there's the petition and it passes that city council vote, the city then submits it to the local boundary commission. Generally, the local boundary commission will evaluate the petition against a set of objective criteria that they follow, and they will decide whether to approve or deny the annexation request. And then generally, once the annexation is passed, the city boundaries will be officially adjusted, governance and services will be extended, and the transition plan essentially carried out. So if we go to page 76.
Heather, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, if we go to page 76, it can go a little bit more detail about the local boundary commission process for commissions, for petitions that are put forward by the city. Once the city submits the petition, local boundary commission staff will review the petition to make sure that it has all of the pieces that it needs to and all of the technical boxes are checked. And at that point, it is accepted for filing. At that point, the local boundary commission will put out a public notice that the petition has been filed. There will be a public comment period for the public to submit their concerns, can also submit legal briefs. If they do, the city also has the ability to file reply briefs. And then the local boundary commission staff will do an analysis of the petition. They will have a local public meeting. To hear from the public testimony and comment. And their review and what they learned from the public meeting will be written up into a report by LBC staff. They will make their recommendation. There's a public comment period on the staff report of 28 days, and then that report is published for the local boundary commission to consider in making their decision. So then the local boundary commission in step 4 will have a public hearing in which they will make their decision to approve, reject, or conditionally approve the petition. So if they conditionally approve it, it's their way of saying, okay, we approve it, but you need to make these changes first. They will issue a written decision. They can reconsider that decision if requested. At that point, for the implementation step 5, usually what ends up happening is a legislative review. The LBC decision is submitted to the legislature within the first 10 days of the next regular session. And basically, if the legislature says and does nothing, it passes. If there's a majority of both houses that choose to override the LBC, the local boundary commission decision, then they can do that. And there is also a judicial appeal. The preferred option is the local option, where by a vote of citizens within city limits and in the areas to be annexed following city election ordinance and procedures, the annexation can be passed. If you have the solid support of both the city residents and the residents in areas to be annexed, that is the preferred option, but it's not always what happens. So if we go to,
Madam Mayor,
Yes, yes, go ahead, sir.
can I ask a question there?
Yeah, sure. Heather, it's Councilman Best. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what you described right there was kind of 2 and 3. Combining both the signing of 10% of the registered voters and 10% of the voters in the territory. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think she was up in the third paragraph there where it says after LBC approval by the vote. I think the 2 and 3 that you were talking about, Councilman Best, is just how a petition can be filed. Is that correct, Heather?
yes,
Wait, muted again, Heather. You're unmuted now, but
Okay. Go ahead, Heather.
a very sensitive computer apparently. So on page 78, the number 2 public comments, that is just the filing with the local boundary commission. And number 3 is during the local boundary commission staff analysis, so it's public comment as the staff write up their report.
Heather, I think he was on page 76. Were you not, Councilman Best?
Well, Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand to submit the petition that you can have, like I said, number 2 was 10% of the registered voters in the city sign it, or 3, the 10% of the registered voters in the proposed annexation area. But in the phases of the annexation process, you were speaking about the best way is to have the voters pass it in both. So if a petition is signed in with the 10% of the registered voters within just the city, does it only go to the voters of the city to then pass or fail, or do both of these actions, petitions, instigate a vote of both areas?
Okay, Heather, go ahead.
So the numbers 2 and 3 on page 76, the signed by percent of the voters in the city or correct, is just for filing the petition. When I talked about the preferred option between the legislative review of the local boundary commission decision versus the preferred local option, the vote of citizens inside city limits and the territories to be annexed. That is once the petition has been filed, reviewed, and approved by the local boundary commission, then in order to finally make it official, it either has to go through the state legislature and not be overruled, or it has to be voted into being by a combination of citizens within the city and within the areas to be annexed.
And then follow-up question, Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Is that process, can that be kind of put out in the forefront and say, we as a city would like to go forward with this, but it will go to, we are asking for it to go to the vote of both entities. So that's out front, saying that we're not wanting to shove anything down anybody's throat, that this is something that we'd like to propose, and it will go to the vote of both entities. Is that something that can be done at the onset of this?
can I jump in? I think, it probably would be good to sort of think through that with your city attorney and, what the legal process really is. But by no means do I think it's something you couldn't do, right? I mean, to define your process and the things that you would like to do. I will channel Kevin Waring, who has worked on these annexation studies here in your community as well as in other communities, and just say that, there's components of the state constitution, I believe it's Article 10, Section 12, that sets forward the notion that the state LBC ought to make the final determination on annexation based on the facts and the petition put before them, but does provide the opportunity for a vote. And so, a vote can be challenging because it's a complicated issue and it causes sometimes confusion and controversy and, may be difficult to proceed through that process, but there's definitely valid reasons for wanting to use that tool. But in terms of the legalities of when you make that choice and how you communicate that up to the LBC, I would have to defer to legal on that itself. And I don't know, Jonathan, if you have any additional thoughts there. But.
Okay. Councilman Best, you were not able to, I don't know if you are viewing also, but since you're on the phone, then Jonathan shook his head no, if I interpreted his communication correctly. So, and Mike is on. Councilman Best, do you want to ask him some questions at this time or ask him to investigate this and come back with a report, or how would you?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
If I may, and I'll ask for council support on this, that we get an opinion back from the attorney. And it doesn't have to be tonight, but I'm interested in, I think that the city of Palmer has had discussions over the years where the outlying areas have felt put upon by these discussions, and I would like to go at it in a different way, that we partner with the areas that are outside of our area. If we start having these discussions, I'd like to put it on the forefront. I'd like to investigate whether or not we can put it as a request to the LBC that this discussion goes forward through this process, in which would be voted upon, that by the individual properties that to be annexed in the city, that if it's mutually beneficial and voted upon and passed, that is the route that we go, that this is not just a legislative thing that goes through, that sometimes people feel that they're being rolled over by governments, and I think that this would be probably more accepted as a partnership and a discussion where, if we have, can show that the borough mill rate is as such a rate and city mill rate is lesser, and then we make the pitch that this is going to be cost effective for them, and they are able to direct and help grow our community. But I'd like to ask for the council support to inquire from the attorney whether or not this is something that we could request as part of this process.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Deputy Mayor?
I would support that completely. I do believe that what the councilman's after, and what I certainly would be after, is to come up with any way possible that will diffuse some of the, the emotions that come out in these hearings, since the councilman and I both have sat through these times before. We don't want individuals that we would like to possibly be inviting to join us to feel disenfranchised from the get-go.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Okay, I think Councilman Valerius had her hand up first, or at least I saw her first.
That's okay, Linda didn't have hers up at all, but I
Well,
just want to say
she-
this is a communications request, and And so maybe we can save this for a committee of the whole and listen to the rest of the presentations. This is all really good conversation, just we're not in that point of the meeting yet.
Yeah, the Councilman Best can bring it up under council comments, and since it was germane to what he had requested, that's why I recognize the deputy mayor. Councilwoman Jill Valerius, you had your hand up?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I was just going to point out the same thing. I think we're not in a committee of the whole right now. We're getting information, so it seems like a discussion should be held at a later point.
Okay. And
I
then,
stand corrected, thank you both.
okay, all righty. I don't see any other hands then, so any other questions from council, or should I let Heather go ahead and finish or continue on? Okay, Heather, go ahead and continue then with your presentation. Thank you.
So I apologize, it appears I may have, over page 76 and gone on straight to 77 and 78, which, illustrates the entire process, that I've now described. But in a nutshell, the city will vote on whether to put forth a petition. The petition passing that goes to the local boundary commission, goes through the local boundary commission review process. Passing that goes either to a vote of the areas of the citizens within the city and the areas to be annexed, or goes through the legislature. Passing that, it goes to be implemented. Moving to page 79, we have a summary of the local boundary commission criteria. There's a longer version on page 90 of the packet, but we did want to touch on this because as we go through our process, we will be looking at the study areas with a view toward, would this pass the criteria review of the local boundary commission as part of what we're doing. So those criteria are, is there a reasonable need for the annexation? Is the population in the new area large enough to justify an annexation? Are essential services provided by another jurisdiction? Are the boundaries appropriate to expand city services? Are the areas compatible in character with the established city? Is annexation in the best interest of the state overall? Does the city have the resources to efficiently serve the new area? And will this proposal receive legislative approval?
Heather, can I ask you a question? Yeah, on the number 2 that you said, is the population in the new area large enough to justify? Is there some guidance from LBC that the area has to have so many residents and or so much land mass? So I don't quite understand if it's large enough to justify. Can you expand on that, please? Thank you.
I will defer to Shanna.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the more detailed language, and really, there's no magic number. I just think they're not looking for like one person, right? It's more like, is it an area that is compatible with the growth trends in the nearby city? John, you want to add?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor and council members, the LBC's purpose there is to really prevent land grabs in many ways into unpopulated areas, so that you don't have cities expanding and municipalities expanding into areas in which there is no population, in which they have really no ability to provide services should there be a population. And you saw this in some ways come into play in the city of Dillingham petition recently, the last couple of years, where they tried to expand the city boundaries to grab several processing plants that of course would have provided additional revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But there was not sufficient population in those areas, nor was the city connected to those areas in a way that they could have provided services. So there's no hard and fast rule there, but what the intent there really is to say is, you know, is there a population for you to serve? Can you serve it? And does it make sense for this area to be part of your municipality?
Okay, all right. Yeah, a little background, our last annexation was just, I think, 2 or 3 city lots, and it was one owner. And so I just didn't know if this was something new that they'd come up with or what, and that was a request of the owner. And that's why I wanted to explore that a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so,
And I do think it's also, Mayor, if I can add one thing, if you do have a property that's owned and that property owner requests to be petitioned, that's different than going through the legislative process and taking an area that is largely undeveloped.
right. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. So I don't see any other hands. Heather, then I guess we'll go back to you, please.
I'm gonna ask if there were any other questions about any of the other criteria that we should discuss more.
I don't see anything. I don't see or hear anybody. Go ahead.
Okay. Then I'll go on to page 80. So one of the things that is important about the annexation process is it goes through the review by the state, is that it follows local priorities, and these are often documented in plans, such as the Palmer Comprehensive Plan or the Mashpee Borough or Area Comprehensive Plan that covers the areas outside of the city that would be annexed. And my review of these suggests that it would, any of the study areas would follow these local priorities, so I think you're good there. And at this point, we would switch or change to now talking about methodology in our approach. So if there are no other, I would just want to make sure there are no other questions about the things that we talked about so far before we move on.
Any questions or comments from the council before we move on to the next portion of the presentation? Okay, so I think we're ready then. Okay. Okay, so who's next?
So on page 82, we start with guiding principles for annexation. We went through the literature review at the beginning of this process and summarized in attachment 1, which is on page 88 of the packet, recommendations for guiding principles for annexation. These include the city goals for annexation, and they expand on them to also include some thoughts about process and public engagement that were also captured in things like the 2010 annexation strategy. And wanted to include those to respond to some of the concerns that council members voiced about being able to have an overarching set of principles that everybody can refer to, whether city leadership, citizenry, or the people living in Greater Palmer outside city boundaries, and really just set the tone for open communication of this process. And they also do incorporate some of that local boundary commission annexation criteria as well. So I won't go into detail with those, but I wanted to reference them and that you have them in your packet if you need to reference them. And then we'll move to page 83, right? Yeah. Page 83, and talk about the study areas. This page was in the previous packet that we had, and it includes a small map, and we do have a larger map on the next page, but before we get there, wanted to just show, again, something that I mentioned earlier, in this, you can see the larger boundary of the water sewer service area is something that we maintained as a reference point. And the light gray shaded areas were the initial study area, just to give an impression of our starting point for thinking about study areas. The economic analysis requires a set of geographic boundaries in order to generate the financial estimates. So we do need to have a stable set of geographic areas to look at in order to conduct the study. And the ones that we started with were chosen to fit with, generally with the local boundary commission criteria for annexation. But we also, as Shannon mentioned earlier, want to check with city leadership before we move forward with the study, and confirm whether these are the study areas that we want to work with. So then if we want to move to page 84, you can see a larger map that includes the smaller sub areas that we defined. And each of the sub areas defines because the character of the areas within that sub area is similar. And it's a more realistic to look at the smaller sub areas and kind of see which ones might behave differently when we go through the analysis. And at this point, transition.
Yes, Councilman Carrington?
I'm just curious with the study areas that the southeast corner was kind of left alone and it kind of looks like an enclave, which is one of those things LPC is allergic to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
agree.
wondering why the southeast section was avoided like the plague. Other than my brother lives there, that's one reason.
I agree with you, Councilman Carrington, because I previously served in the state senate and was chairman of Community and Regional Affairs Committee, and the local boundary commission was one of our assignments. And if this map would be presented to that group that I was chairman of, that would have been very quickly one of their first concerns, and especially I think since item G, sort of goes down there and that, sort of a dog leg type thing, because they do, unless they've changed, wanted it to be pretty concise and uniform and fill in blank areas. So I would, so I agree with you. I think we should look closely at that. So anyway, now, were these given to you by our administration, or were these areas that the consultant came up with?
These were outlined in discussion with city staff and consultants.
Okay.
And we did discuss that point that you raised.
Mm-hmm.
I think if the city were to include E, F, and G in an annexation petition, then yes, the LBC would definitely highlight that other area as a potential enclave. If the city were to include only F, only E, or E and F without G, it may or may not. So I think this is an example where we as consultants are probably looking for some direction from you, but do any of my other team members want to say anything add to that?
Yeah. No, I think, Heather, you kind of described it. I mean, we had a collaborative conversation with staff, and I think guidance from this group, we can add study areas and subtract them moving forward. Unless Brad wants to add anything to the discussion at this time.
Does council have any objections? Brad is sitting at the table, and does any council have any objections for his input at this time? I don't, yeah, so go ahead, sir, as long as it's okay with John.
So
Okay.
specifically to the boundaries, yeah, this is a combination of, past studies, past sizes, a combination of objections in 2010, also probably a realistic rationalization of just how far you could go with an annexation petition, all the way out to G. It was illustrated by Jonathan earlier about the Dillingham example. I mean, to annex G without E or F or D would probably be the Dillingham experience,
Well, it
where
has
it's
to be
just not rationalized or justified.
It has to be contiguous, so you'd at least have to do E, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some way to get there, right? So,
Yeah.
Outer Springer in that area could be construed as an enclave if you were able to get to G. I'm not sure you're going to be able to realistically get to G at this point. One of the considerations with the Outer Springer is it's made up of really large tracts of land that are farms that probably would not receive any city services other than maybe Outer Springer and Sky Ranch, some of those that are at the extreme edge of that Outer Springer. But that's really why the maps are here, is for you to look at the maps and rationalize and decide whether or not this is something that you would agree with. And truthfully, that's why we are here, just to talk about the maps.
Okay, good, all right, great. Alrighty, does any of the other council have any input or questions, or are we ready for the consultants to proceed? Okay, I don't see any hands or anything, so go ahead then, Heather.
And I was gonna hand it over to Jonathan to,
Okay.
if you want, say any final words about this study.
Oh, okay.
Or just take us into the next topic.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, thank you, council members, for your time tonight. I mean, you're already getting into the conversation and the feedback that we hope we'll get from you when you move to a committee of the whole is to give that feedback. You already correctly note that, for example, we could not add G without having at least part of E because it has to be contiguous. You could make the same note about C, that you could not add C without at least some portion of B or D in there. And our goal, as we move to page 85 in your packet, is to really provide you with an analysis that's flexible enough to give you some idea of the economic effects without, of course, locking you into these specific boundaries. And I think it's really worth repeating at this point that, even after your commentary to us after tonight about what you would like to see us analyze, that in any final petition, should you decide to go that far, that you have the opportunity to draw those lines within the petition and are not wed to this economic analysis. So, I mean, it could come back that you could decide that you want to partition F and take a portion of F or a portion of E, or even say, in order to not create an enclave, take that northern portion of G, but not the southern portion as divided by the Parks Highway, right? So you have that flexibility going forward. Our goal is to break the potential areas for annexation down into small enough chunks to give you some idea as to what the economic effects would be so that you can make an informed decision, not to wed you to any of those specific areas. And of course, we have to draw lines on the map to do that, and that's exactly where we are. So if you look at slide page 85, you'll see the very first thing that we do is we select potential annexation areas just simply for the purposes of analysis. We want them to make sense as much as we can, but we also want to leave that flexibility to you. The next thing that we do is we try to understand those areas as much as possible in terms of population, understanding what's there in terms of property values, defining factors that might affect services that need provision there. For example, are there any parks in those areas that might be picked up as part of incorporation? Roads and public services are, of course, roads and public works are, of course, one of the primary services that gets picked up in those areas. And we also want to understand, particularly for our communities that are primarily sales tax based in terms of their revenue, such as the city, that you have that commercial, you understand what's going on in terms of commercial activity in those areas as well. Well, while we're developing those pictures, at the same time, we are understanding how you spend your money inside of the city of Palmer. And so we have literally gone through your budget, both revenues and expenditures, the costs, line by line, to understand whether or not we think that those expenditures would be affected by annexation. So, for example, if you add enough people, you're going to need to add new police officers, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need to add police administration at the same rate as you're adding police officers, right? So we have conducted interviews with all of your department heads. Those interviews are actually complete at this time, although I did say, we reserve the right to come back to you with questions if they arise, and they all said yes. Those interviews were fantastic. The department heads really came prepared, knew what they were talking about, and gave us that information. And now we're at that point where once we have your input on the sort of the boundaries of the areas for the purposes of analysis, not for the purposes of petition, we will do our final calculations as to population, property, and those elements, and combine those things to create an estimation of the net revenue effects for each of those areas and the areas in combination. So we'll be looking at, okay, if we have one area, it has this effect on public works, or on the fire department, but if we get to this area and it's these combinations, then it's going to have this level of effect. Because sometimes you get economies of scale, but sometimes you need to add a new building, right? And those are the type of effects that we want to get to. Once we have that done, we move to the 4 and the 5, which is we will be sitting down with borough staff, borough planning staff, to really understand where population development is going on in the community around the city of Palmer, and to come up with some ideas of what future population growth could look like, as well as how your cost trends are changing over time, and that gives us an idea of what the net effects might be, say, 10 years down the road. So that way, we put that all together for you so that you can make an informed decision about, what areas maybe you want to add, or you want to add them for reasons other than revenue, but you also want to make sure that that revenue-wise it makes sense both for the individuals, the taxpayers who are coming into the city, and the city itself. And that's the type of picture that we put together and we'll have for you at the end. If you want a good example of this, you can go back to the 2006 study, or we're happy to provide you with examples of, much of this team was involved in the Soldano study, happy to show you that type of output too, so that you can see what's coming in terms of the level of detail. But that's what we try to do inside of the economic analysis, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions before Tanya takes over to do community involvement.
Okay, is there any questions? Jonathan? Oh, yes, go ahead, sir.
Just a point of clarification, I think your analysis with the police officers was accurate, but I don't think that your fire department analysis was accurate, because we already are in fire service area that exceeds our city limits. So I don't think that would be impacted the same way.
It would.
If I understand.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Your cost would not be impacted. What will be impacted there with your fire is the amount of revenue that you get from Matsu Borough with respect to reimbursement. And then the other issue is that in talking with the fire chief, is that if you expand your boundaries, it's very likely to change your ISO rating, which would not affect the city per se, but it could affect insurance rates for your city citizens. And so you may have a public policy decision to make going forward that because your city boundary has expanded, while the services haven't changed, you may need to build or choose to build a new fire station in order to maintain that ISO rating. And that's the type of stuff that we will be including in there. So I mean, you're exactly right, the services in particular don't change, but you may have a public policy call coming up with respect to your ISO rating in order to make sure that your property and residential insurance costs don't go up.
And Councilman Carrington, did I see you? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a follow-up, Councilman Best?
Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind, can we kind of dig into that a little bit? So that's, what you're saying is that if the boundaries were to change, even though that we already provide a fire service for that area, it could affect the ISO, which is towards our insurance rates within city limits differently.
That is correct.
Interesting. Thank you.
Councilman Carrington, did I see you move your hand or?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead, sir.
yes, ma'am, thank you. I guess I would just state, while we're looking at the map, that I wish the Outer Springer would be included in the study areas. Just, I don't know, my librarian nature wants to see the data, so I guess so.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? I don't see any other hands. So Jonathan, was that all that of your portion for right now, for this evening? Or did you have some more?
No, ma'am, except to say that Councilmember Carrington, as a former librarian, I understand your desires. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Iden to take us home.
Okay, so do we have anyone else from your consultant group now that has further information to provide for us this evening?
Yeah, hi, this is Tanya.
Hi.
Mayor, thank you so much. And councilpersons, I just have the final slide.
Okay.
To talk about the community analysis, and by that we mean really the public process and engaging stakeholders who are affected by annexation and who want to learn about annexation and be a part of the decision-making process. So we do the economic analysis first so that the librarians and us get that data and have kind of real numbers and interesting information to look at and share with community members so that we're kind of talking about real things. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you just a minute? On my pages, I go from 84 to, and you said you had, maybe another slide? Oh, let's see. I'm with you. Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the final slide, page 8.
Thank you.
You bet. So really, the process that kind of ensues after the economic analysis that occurs is kind of taking that information out to community members and folks that are in those study areas, and then also just folks within the Palmer city limits, and having a good and robust conversation about what does annexation really mean to folks who would maybe be part of a petition to be annexed, or to the city's overall budget. And so we just want to kind of reiterate that we're at the beginning of the process, and we're really starting to study and understand what annexation in the different study areas can mean. But then we want to have a robust and meaningful dialogue with community members, and recognizing that we're going to need to be pretty creative because we are, as you know, in a pandemic. And this is where maybe many of you, now that you've been living for 7 months through this kind of public health situation, might have tips or ideas about what's worked well in Palmer to reach out to folks during this time, and what might be a good approach to take. I mean, typically, we would host kind of smaller meetings with existing community associations. We would go to neighborhoods that are part of the study areas and talk with folks that way. We know we want to do a survey, and we're working on survey questions that could be, of course, done online, and anybody could really respond to those. We're open and excited to come to any existing group that might be getting together in already kind of a Zoom scenario like this, to be able to educate and share information with folks about the annexation and what it means in the study, and the study areas. So, and really the goal is to kind of identify the issues that might be there and to use, Councilmember Best's, thoughts to kind of really partner with folks who, might be affected by annexation to understand really, where the rub is and what kind of information people need to feel comfortable with the idea, and also, what kind of, questions might need to be answered before it even moves towards a petition. So that's really the goal with the community, outreach component. And, also, I guess, just to kind of reiterate as well, like one of the key pieces right now that we do have set up for individuals to start getting engaged is there is the website that Heather mentioned, and then people can go to that website and sign up to get regular emails about what's happening with the process and how to be engaged in the process. So I would really encourage you to tell all of the folks that you work with and represent and hear from and talk to that that is an opportunity for them. And we do hope to, think it's set up so that anytime there's an update on the website, an email notification would go out. So as information is coming in and we're able to kind of have more to share, we'll be able to share that with folks. But I guess I would stop and just say, if any of you have thoughts about how you'd like to see kind of the community engagement process be designed and rolled out, we would love to hear from you. Or if you just have any questions for me.
Okay. Couple questions from council, comments? I see, I don't see any hands up. I don't.
We also have one more slide, slide 87, which just reminds you that Heather is our conduit to all of you, and you can always reach out to her directly as well as the project manager. And her email is there and phone number is there as well.
Okay. Anything further from the council? Or anything last minute things that, yeah, go ahead.
I was just also gonna say,
Uh-huh.
I understand that the meeting is going on till, who knows, maybe late into the wee hours of the night, depends on what's on your agenda. And so after this presentation, if there aren't any more questions from council, we're gonna hop off, but we do wanna hear, because I know that folks might be there to testify or have opinions or thoughts already that they're gonna share about annexation. So we just want to assure you that we will listen through the Radio Free Palmer, the opportunity that, everybody else has to listen. So we are using this as our first opportunity to hear what the community has to say as well. So I just want to assure you.
Good.
That
We
while
appreciate.
we might disappear after this component, we aren't really, we're eavesdropping.
Okay. Okay. So last call for any council comments why they are currently on Zoom. Or, yeah, Councilwoman Burbrick, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to these folks for coming back to us a second night and finishing this presentation for us. It's something that we all unanimously voted for back in March, is to have this study done, and I think it's important that we listen to what you're doing, and I really appreciate you coming back a second time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think we all agree with that. We're sorry that our last meeting took mostly for audience participation and for the comments, but I was glad that you were here to be able to hear some of those, and if the clerk hasn't forwarded, which I'm sure she has to you, the written comments, so you would have those. We do, I don't know for sure if we do have anybody in the audience tonight, but we do have some written comments that the clerk will be forwarding to you that will be read into the record. So, okay. So last call. And again, thank you for adjusting your schedules to come more quickly, probably back to us than what you had anticipated. And so, and I'm very pleased that you do have that website. I think hopefully that will, really help people. And we will talk to the administration maybe about even being able to put that more widely out to the people so they'll be able to get hooked up too. So, okay. Well, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure we will see you. Hopefully, it won't all have to be on Zoom, but and I think as I was looking at some of those areas of the proposed annexation, and I'm sure you've already researched this, there is at least 2 of those subdivisions that have homeowners associations that are pretty active, and so I'm sure in your research that that's one of the ways that you plan on reaching out to them, and I don't know how large and active they are, but again, that would be, something to put on that for outreach, and so, okay, good. All righty, okay. Thank you again, and now we will, let me ask the council, are you ready for a break, council? Or should we just, okay, I see some heads nodding, so we will go ahead and take, according to our clock here, it's 8:12, so we will come back at 8:22. Thank you.
I did get 2 FaceTime requests during the meeting from Obie Johnson.
Oh, what's the last 4?
0740.
Okay, ladies, it's 8:22, okay. Alrighty, I'm gonna,
I got it.
Okay, I've got it. Let's get the.
okay. I'm having, on this end, I'm having some challenges on my iPad, and so that's what they're all working on. But anyway, I'll call the council meeting of September 8th, 2020 back to order. And the next item on our agenda is reports, and City Manager, sir, you're up.
Yes, good evening. First, thank you, City Council, for approving the consent agenda. Those 3 items will allow us to operate a little bit more efficiently during this COVID, so I appreciate that. So first off, just to kind of keep you in the loop, we are working on our legislative capital priorities, which the City Council usually does, and then the state usually ignores them, but maybe someday it'll work for us. Number 2, we're spending a lot of time working on traffic and pedestrian safety. A lot of this is from our citizens, so we're working diligently on that. As far as the traffic, we have ordered some equipment that's going to make a difference, and we are also looking at by rules and regulations if we can do some changes that would allow us to do additional items. Also, too, this week I'm meeting with all the departments on their 2021 budget requests. We are determined to have this to you early, make it plain and simple so we can get this done by Thanksgiving time. As you know, the next item, our fire chief is leaving the state, and we have 8 qualified candidates we'll be interviewing in the next couple of weeks. And let's see here. Also too, just so you know, I've signed a pre-agreement regarding the rate.
Oh, we're here.
It's just a couple minutes late.
Yeah, so.
Should I start all over?
Mayor.
Yeah.
He needs to start
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we were going, we were just sitting here waiting, sorry.
No, we were. Sorry, we apologize.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so that was good practice.
It was very
Okay.
good practice.
So,
Okay.
good evening. Thank you for coming back.
You have somebody in the waiting room.
Yep, it's giving Richard an opportunity to join us.
Oh, very good. I feel very good about that now.
Notation that Councilmember Best
Now
joined at
everybody's
8:25.
here.
Okay. So first off, thank you very much for approving the consent agenda. There's 3 items on there that will allow us to operate more effectively during this pandemic crisis. So next meeting, September 22nd, we're going to be bringing to you the phase 2 of our business nonprofit grants. We had good participation, but less than we anticipated, and we think there are more folks out there to help, and there's more available funds for that. Also, too, we're going to be asking you to do some direct grants to assess our meals programs in the city, daycare services, and also to housing assistance. We are very concerned with our residents for both mortgages and rent during this time not being able to meet and lose their homes. So we are working to bring that back to you on September 22nd. Okay. Right now, we'll be working on the legislative capital priorities. We do this every year. We get it to the state and we pray, and it's usually not answered, but we'll try that again this year. We are spending time reviewing traffic and pedestrian safety. For traffic, we have purchased some gear that should be coming shortly. We're also going to be looking at designation of our the standards. We can do more things to kind of help that. But that is by far our biggest complaint that we get from our residents is speeding on our roads. Meeting this week with all the departments. They have their budgets complete, and so they're reviewing with me, and then I'm trying to fit those together because we are doing our darndest to make sure you have this early so we can approve this by Thanksgiving, so we don't have to have any meetings in December.
Okay, good.
As you know, our chief of police is resigning and leaving the state. Oh, I am sorry, Mr. Shelton, he's in the audience. So that was a mistake, a slip of the tongue. It is our fire chief, Mr. John McNutt. And Dwayne, get him a towel, his head is sweating.
He almost pulled his rifle.
So we have 8 qualified candidates, some internal, some out, one out of state, some others in state, but not the city of Palmer, to be interviewed in the next couple weeks. The thing I've been working on with our airport manager, Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Gaddy, is an agreement with Raven and a bankruptcy court. As you know, Raven declared bankruptcy. It put us in a bind. We have agreed to a financial settlement, not large, but significant to the city of Palmer. That will be coming to you for final approval. They wanted me to sign off on a recommendation to the city council, and I've done that. The last thing I have is effective tomorrow, happiness in my household because my mother-in-law is going to be a Palmer resident.
Hey.
And me and the wife will be following shortly, depending on how quick the tile guy can get done. So that's all I have this evening.
Okay. Questions from the city manager regarding his
Sorry,
report?
Chief.
Regarding his report or any other item? Okay, I don't see any hands or anything. Madam Clerk, do you have a report for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to report again about the elections.
Okay.
As some things had passed, we did have our voter registration deadline pass on Sunday, September 6th. So this week, the Division of Election will be inputting everything, and we will soon have our list of all qualified voters to vote in our October 6th election. We are looking at 4 different ways of voting this year, as we have had for several years, which we have the absentee by mail applications. Those are due on Tuesday, September 29th, and that is set by the code and will be adhered to very strictly with my office. Any applications that are received after Tuesday, September 29th, we will provide personal reach to each applicant to let them know of the other means that they can vote. We will be doing a first release of the ballots or mailing of the ballots as soon as we get our registrars and and we're able to do a vet of all of the current applications. Right now, we are at about 210 applications. So I'm really hoping that we can get our registers and then do our second qualification review with a target date of ballots being mailed by end of next week.
Okay.
But it all just depends on when we get that turned around from DOE. And then when we get applications after that first mail out, we will be vetting those applications and then mailing them to the citizens as we get them. We won't be holding on to them. They will be mailed immediately. We are looking to make a ballot drop box in the front of the city hall. The current mail drop or the payment drop box, I worked with the finance director, and it'll be a combined ballot and payment box. And so people can drop their ballots off at City Hall in the secure drop box this year. I have had some people in previous years deliver it right to me, but since the doors aren't open, they can drop it in there, and it will be checked on a regular basis each day. And so I want to let people know that we have that in the works. And as soon as ballots are mailed, that will be back up and ready to, or not back up, it will be up and ready to go.
Okay.
Backup is what I said, because we did have the magnets on there and the sign on the window, because we were just trying to make sure that everything fit and worked. And boy, did it catch some people's attention that first day that we put them up. Within an hour, I had a phone call. So someone was asking, "What is that? What are you doing?" So people are watching. They are very observant to it, and I appreciate that a lot. Something that we're going to be looking at doing this year is a few more signs to help with the absentee and early voting, really not the absentee, but the early voting. As we talked about last year, we did get a sign to go on the corner there of Colony Way and Everett. And so that's currently where the Friday Fling sign is. We have a sign going up there, and I have worked with the library director to help us have navigation lawn signs so that people know that the voting's there at the Mat-Su Borough. We will also, I'm trying to coordinate with the senior center to have a sign at the senior center that talks about that the voting location has changed to the gym. And I do want to let everyone know we are advertising in the paper of that change, and we have been putting everywhere that it says Mat-Su Borough Gym, so that that precinct changes to that location. That leads me to another voting option that someone has is the polls. On actual election day, we will have both of our precincts open. The senior center, 1175, has been moved though to the Mat-Su Borough Gym, and 1170 will remain in the back of the council chamber, assembly chamber. Now I'm doing the wrong name here. And then two more other ways that someone can vote is early voting. That does start on 9/21, which is Monday, 2 Mondays from now. And it starts at 8 a.m. at the Mat-Su Borough in the back of the assembly chambers. We'll be scheduled to run Monday through Saturday until October 5th with hours of 8 to 5. So we're very excited to have the Saturday hours back in Palmer. Well, first I'll have early voting in Palmer, and then the first time we'll have Saturday hours in Palmer, but the Saturday hours back.
Good.
So a huge, huge thank you to the early voting election officials who will be doing that. That's going to be a lot of work, and I'm very, very grateful to them. And then the last and not least is the personal representative special needs ballot. This is someone who has a special need, some desire that they can send a personal representative to the early voting site or a poll site to pick up a ballot and have it delivered to them, voted, and then that personal representative must return that ballot back to the early voting or poll site before close of polls on October 6th at 8 p.m. Elections are just around the corner, and boy, am I and I think my staff ready for October 13th. We're very excited for October 6th, but.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments to the city clerk? Okay, I don't see any.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Ready? You have my written report, a couple of additional things. you'll see I put on there the second phase of the Glen Highway project. A couple weeks ago, I was listening to the Department of Transportation's presentation to the Assembly, and they stated that it was not going to be next year, but then the year after, which we thought the Glen Highway was going to continue this next year. And the 911 task force, we did submit our report. Then the governor did issue another executive order on number 200 to ask us to continue until December 31st, and he has given us 3 additional items to address. And we're pretty sure that they are going to expand the task force to include somebody from the interior, which wasn't on it previously. And also, we're pretty sure that nobody has to reapply, that the existing members, unless they prefer not to, will continue on. So those are the only additional things that I have. Anybody have questions or comments regarding my report? Mike, I see, okay, I guess not. Already, then, Mike, I see a yellow box around your phone, so do you have a report for us?
Excuse me, not this evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is audience participation. Audience participation is open to anyone that would like to address the council on any subject. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself and 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Audience participation is now open.
Can you hear me okay?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Matsu Valley. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. My comments, I think, on this first of 2 audience participations tonight will be focusing on the annexation that you've been discussing in the last 2 meetings. I'd like to remind you also, the borough, Matsu Borough had public hearings dealing with going from second-class powers to first-class powers. Another one was changing the role of the mayor in the borough. The borough decided not to hold a 3rd public hearing, decided that they agreed with me. This is COVID era. This is not the time to be discussing this because it's less chance of connecting with the people. So they put that out way out there next year. But what we have here is the city council addressing annexation. In the midst of the same argument that I just said, and the borough assembly respectively decided that this is not something you should be discussing at this time. How can you get the people in that part of the conversation? And so I'd like to add these words, that what you are doing is a radical change and restructuring proposal. A definition of the word shakedown. I looked it up before I said it. That's the definition. It's a shakedown. And this is not time to do a radical change and restructuring. This is time to show that you are more respectful and having a conversation with the people. But in COVID time, you got to be more careful for your safety and the public. And by adding more chairs in this room, instead of moving into a larger room, is not going to be a safety issue. And unfortunately, the clerk presently is not hearing at my conversation. And it would be nice to hear the part of what I have to say. And I would encourage you to cancel, put off this contract, ongoing work that you have parties outside of this council involved with the annexation and their work. This is not the time. You got to put it off. You gotta show yourself and being responsible with the money you have. And I would also like to point out that the Borough Assembly joined me in the school board tonight. A representative of the governor's office from the Valley went up there before I went up there. And he announced that there was gonna be a $2 billion shortfall. Then when a question asked by an assembly member, remind you of the recent decision, oh, I guess it's $3 billion. And then another comment, well, I guess it's another billion. And then after his comments, he walked out, and then I had my words to say. And people are not doing their homework. And that's what you all need to do. Do your homework with what you've got. Don't play with money, particularly on the CARES Act money. But do your homework and work with the structure you've got and make it work better for the people so it shows confidence to the people that you are elected by. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council? Okay, I don't see anyone else come forward, but we do have some written testimony, so I'll recognize the clerk at this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Beginning written testimony, I do want to let the public know that the testimony has been provided in hard copy at the back of the room here on our handout table. And it has been provided to each of the council members that are joining us here on Zoom. So everyone present tonight does have it available. And so, beginning, Kate Graber. Please read this email into the record of the September 8th, 2020 Palmer City Council meeting as my testimony regarding annexation by the City of Palmer. Mayor and council members, I am a resident Mountain Ranch subdivision. Even though the approach that was used to make public a study for annexation by the City of Palmer could have been made in a friendlier manner, I doubt it would have received a friendlier reception by some who have made up their minds prior to the study that they do not want to be voting residents of the City of Palmer. Or maybe they didn't consider that they would actually have a voice with a vote. The way it is right now, the area that is proposed to be annexed is an unincorporated area without a community voice that carries weight with the Mat-Su Borough. We as an unincorporated area have no voice in determining our community's development or services except as individuals with a weak voice. If the proposed annexed area had a community council, it would have a voice that carried weight with the Mat-Su Borough regarding development, services, and funding for development and services. A lack of interest in organizing the Greater Palmer Community Council put that possibility to rest. Personally, I feel the diverse nature of the proposed Greater Palmer Community Council area makes a consensus nearly impossible. I personally am tired of not having a voice or vote in what happens around Mountain Ranch subdivision that affects our quality of life unless I or someone else rallies my neighbors to action. The location of Mountain Ranch subdivision area is like a notch taken out of the City of Palmer boundary. We are surrounded in nearly 3 sides by the City of Palmer. We even have City of Palmer water piped to the majority of homes. I am interested in hearing more about the annexation and what it might bring to my area if the city decides to pursue it. I'd love to have a vote for what happens in my area and around my area. Sincerely, Kate Graber. Sean Collar. I have lived in Pioneer Meadows for over 20 years. One of the many reasons I moved into this neighborhood was it was out of city limits. We have never had any issues with any services and certainly do not need to pay more taxes and have more restrictions on our lives. I said no the first time, and I still say no on city limits annexation. Thank you, Sean K. Collar. David Kohlberg. Good morning. I am still waiting for a response from the city as stated in your email below from last Tuesday and Wednesday. This is a perfect example of poor customer service and management within another reason to oppose the annexation idea. Ignoring public concerns is not a best practice to follow. It further proves the point that the city wants control, paren, and extra $ money, close paren, but does not want to serve. Sent on August 26th. Thank you, and I appreciate the reply. The automatic email below is another example of why the City of Palmer annexation, quote, expansion, and quote, idea is a horrible idea. Ellipses. Quote, if you have testimony you wish to submit into the record for tonight's council meeting, it will have to be done in person at the meeting. Your testimony will not be submitted unless you attend the meeting, end quote, ellipses. We are in a pandemic and you are requesting residents to pack the building. What accommodations were made for residents who were sick, ill, or unable to attend for other reasons? Why was the maximum capacity what was the maximum capacity of the room? Why were council members not required to attend, quote, in person, question, end quote? It is not a Burger King universe. Ellipses, the city of Palmer cannot have it their way. This is a perfect example why residents are opposed to more government. As residents of the area, we do not want more government control and wastefulness. If we wanted to live in the city of Palmer, we would have all moved there in the first place. Thank you for your time. Email, that was the response to the email sent Wednesday, August 26th, 12:13 a.m. Sorry I missed your message. I will be out of the office until Wednesday, August 26th. If you have testimony you wish to submit into the record for tonight's council meeting, it will have to be done in person at the meeting. Your testimony will not be submitted unless you attend the meeting. I will follow up on your message when I return tomorrow morning. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Norma Ayali, City Clerk. That email was from David Kohlberg. David Kohlberg, please add in the record for the meeting tomorrow for the Palmer City annexation meeting. Thank you. Email from Mayor DeVries on Saturday, September 5. Thus, coming Tuesday night at 7 p.m., the council will hearing again from annexation consultant. You can testify under audience participation or send an email and ask that it be read into the record. Please pass the word. Edna DeVries, Mayor. Email, August 26, 2020, from David Kohlberg. Good evening. My name is David Kohlberg, and I live at 13891 East Jersey Loop in Mountain Ranch Estates. I was born at Valley Hospital, by the old Little League field in Palmer by the current DMV, almost 50 years ago. My family has been in the greater Palmer area for over 50 years. Moreover, my mother worked for the city of Palmer as well. My mother often shared stories with us when she worked at the city of Palmer. Some were positive, but some were focused on her frustrations related to, quote, wasteful controlling agendas and corruption, end quote, within the Palmer city government years ago. It appears this has not changed. Watching the City of Palmer Council meeting this evening was painful. Why does it take so long to get things done? Why does it take a private, quote, consultant, end quote, to analyze an annexation idea? Who is paying for this? Another example of wasteful spending and poor management. I am extremely opposed to the annexation idea for my area. Hearing testimony tonight was loud and clear. Residents do not want it. As a longtime Alaskan, I am well aware of the council staff agenda and intentions. I am sure the council has done some positive things within the community, and it is greatly appreciated. I am still unsure why the council needs so many members. In government, it seems that overstaffing is a major reason why things do not get done, and wasteful time / management exists. The Palmer City Council ends to focus more on timely / proper snow removal, maintaining baseball facilities. Look at the senior league and old little league fields by the DMV. They look horrible. Weeding / landscaping, tennis court restoration, maintaining roads properly, filling potholes, restoring old buildings, animal control, cutting crime / vandalism, reducing drug and alcohol abuse, decreasing suicide numbers, allowing more development / industry to create more jobs, building facilities for youth, sports / organizations / careers, and holding people accountable for junk / unmaintained yards, and the list goes on and on, ellipses. The council needs to focus on making Palmer better before they try to, quote, expand, end quote, and, quote, trespass, end quote, to other areas in an attempt to increase revenue and control. Kathy Giesel, did I say that last name right? Giesel, thank you. Kathy Giesel did not listen to the public and tried to use power / control in office and was voted out recently. Annexation for these areas is a horrible idea, and the council needs to listen to the voice of the public on this issue. Regards, David and Wendy Kohlberg. Misty Ott, hello, please read this email into record for tonight's council meeting. Mountain Ranch Estates is an established neighborhood where nearly all residents have a community well - city water has been increasing annually, and individual septic systems maintained at owner's expense. Roads into and out of the neighborhood are owned and maintained by the state or Mat-Su Borough. State troopers service the neighborhood satisfactorily. Roads within the neighborhood are not wide enough to add sidewalks, and the borough outsources maintenance. We would not benefit from new infrastructure, and I doubt the city of Palmer will do road maintenance internally, increasing our rates with the new outsourced contract. Refuse is surfaced by private companies at nearly the same rate the city offers. If the city could handle the additional workload and we chose to change, that didn't read right. Refuse is serviced by private companies at nearly the same rate the city offers if the city could handle the additional workload and we chose to change. Searching the city's website and municipal codes, I am unable to find the mill rate for property tax assessment, but I doubt it will be a savings, likely an increase from what I pay the borough. I see no benefit to annexation and am opposed to it. Those of us in established borough neighborhoods shouldn't share the bill for potential new developments to enjoy city services, which we will not have ourselves. I'm opposed to paying City of Palmer sales tax for online purchases. There's no reason for me to pay 3% for online services such as Netflix or for USPS, FedEx, or UPS to use state and borough roads to deliver packages to me. I do nearly all of my grocery shopping in Anchorage or Wasilla because they have full service stores which carry all the items I want in one stop rather than the quote marketplace end quote and limited supply stores Palmer is intent on. The fact that no mailers or public notices have gone to owners under the current annexation plan makes this look like the city's attempt to make a cash grab on sales tax. Keep on keeping Palmer, Palmer. Leave Mountain Ranch out of it. Thank you, Misty Ott. Jason Perego. Palmer City Council. As a resident of Palmer, outside of city limits, I oppose the recommendation to extend city limits to include Mountain Ranch neighborhood. Surrounded by farmland on 3 sides, this does not fit the ideal annexation methodology that looks to gather land for business and continued development and thus additional revenue through taxes, fines, and fees associated with living in city limits. The city of Palmer can offer no service to this well-established neighborhood. They cannot provide city sewer unless the city is willing to pay for everyone's septic removal, plumbing repairs, yard repair, and subsequent sewage lines that the city would install. Can the city of Palmer afford that? Will the city of Palmer pay to have sidewalks and streetlights installed in this neighborhood? No other city service would benefit the residents. Only the city would be in a position to benefit to gain revenue. This is not in mutual interest of both the city and the residents and therefore should not be allowed to proceed. Why are the houses along the Matanuska River excluded from the proposed annexation? The properties are more expensive, the houses are larger, the possibility for revenue is increased. There is new development which would be ideal for annexation. It is because some of the decision makers live in those more, quote, well-to-do, end quote, areas. If this area along the Matanuska River is not included and the access to the public use trails on the Palmer Hay Flats are not made available to all Palmer residents, then the assumption of an, quote, entitled group, end quote, exists, and who in that group is part of this decision or on the city council. Which of you live along the Matanuska River and Palmer Hay Flats? Everyone living outside of city limits chose to live outside city limits for a purpose. They chose to buy a house outside of city limits for a purpose. They chose to start a business outside of city limits for a purpose. Please do not continue with the closely attempt to annex neighborhoods that will not benefit residents in any way. Handle what you have in city limits and clean up the areas in disarray. Encourage more businesses to come to Palmer, create more attractions, and allow a private company to build a decent hotel that will make people want to visit and spend money in Palmer. Thank you, Jason Perego. Esther and Steve Ream. Thank you. Steve and I would like to submit our concerns about the city annexing our subdivision, Crimson View. We fail to see what our benefit would be by being a part of the city of Palmer. What are you planning on providing to the homeowners after the annexation? We already have garbage, water, and sewer, so your services would be no benefit to us. Are you planning on giving sidewalks, streetlights, and fire hydrants? Please include our letter to be read in the next meeting against the city annexation, our subdivision, Crimson View. Esther and Steve Ream. Jake Whitaker. I do want to point out that this email did not get received with an attachment. There was nothing attached. I make that comment because he does make a comment that there's an attachment in the email. Jake Whitaker, Palmer Land Grab. I acquired my property in 2019. The idea was to bring jobs to the Mat-Su Valley. After basically being forced out of Anchorage due to slow and excessive costs due to planning and zoning requirements, I thought I had found a 40-acre property that could be developed in a cost-effective, responsible way. My tenants only needed 8 to 10 acres, so I began surveying and costing out different scenarios to see what made sense. Residential, low, medium, or high. Commercial, warehousing, or gravel extraction, or maybe a combination. The first thing I found was Palmer City was hard to get information out of. It was like pulling teeth to find out where water mains were located and how they could be integrated into planning and subdivision. We were told one thing, then another. The end result was it made no economical sense to use Palmer City for water and sewer. At the same time, I was trying to find out about Hemmer Road plans. This also was somehow hard to find out what long-range plans were from the state, Mat-Su Borough, and especially the city of Palmer. I found out about the 2016 comprehensive plan. This seems to be wishful thinking, not a plan. Reading the plan in relation to my property location to the wish of Hemmer Road bypass, I found that very little groundwork was done to see what would need to be done to make it happen. As a matter of fact, the 2006 plan does not even commit to the location of a bypass. This is a quote from the 2006 plan. Consequently, the challenge in Palmer is how to move traffic into and disperse traffic in Palmer rather than how to move traffic through Palmer on the Glen Highway. The primary strategy to achieve this objective is the creation of an arterial level street on the north-south section line. See proposed road improvements map. Close paren. That is currently partially occupied by Hammer Road, Blunk Street, and North Warner Road. A new arterial on this or a similar route. Note, the or a similar route line. These are the main reasons I am against the City of Palmer's annexation of my land. Poor planning, zoning issues, increased development costs, no benefit in being part of the City of Palmer, not letting the affected landowners have the final say in whether they want to be part of the City of Palmer's big land grab. Palmer has already been told no. We the people do not wish to be a part of Palmer. Listen to the people. Other questions I have are just how many square miles does Palmer want to consume? Is this to be done in stages or all at once? How much tax is the city going to collect from the land grab? What will be the costs of the services provided? Police, road maintenance, city government, etc. Jake Whitaker.
Okay, so that includes our audience participation. The next item on our agenda is public hearing, resolution number 20.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yes, Councilwoman Combs?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe that we actually received any of those via email except for one that was emailed to us directly. And I thought that Norma had mentioned that she emailed those to us, but I'm not sure I received it.
Okay, thank you. All right,
I did send them at just after 5. I will double check.
Okay.
I have a feeling that my email's in my office. My
Okay.
computer in my office is having a glitch.
Okay.
So I will double check that. Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, any other thing before we go on to the public hearing? Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing for resolution number 20-022, adopting a COVID-19 CARES Act funds policy. Would anyone like a staff report, or should I just go ahead and open up the public hearing? Okay, I don't see any requests, so the public hearing now is open for resolution 20-022, and if you're testifying at this time, please keep it to this resolution. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. The public hearing is now open.
Just pull one page out. Okay. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Matthew Valley. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, decision made by the governing body is more likely to public interest. On the item before you, dealing with adopting a COVID-19 CARES Act funds policy, one thing comes to mind, and anyone who knows my words over the course of a number of years, what I would look at is the date it was introduced. It was introduced for this meeting. It's a resolution dealing with CARES Act. That's a significant item, but the fact is, it doesn't give a fair chance for the public to look at that. It should have had introduction or public hearing. But you've had over the time a policy that says resolutions, okay, we can introduce it at the same meeting. That's wrong. We're dealing with CARES Act funding and policies, and this is not the way to go. So I strongly encourage you not to close public hearing on this item. It would have also been nice to have a staff report. I appreciate the mayor asking, is there anyone, the staff, to report on this? It would have been nice for the public to hear that report and not after close a public hearing and then we can't respond and we say we, the public. That's not also a fair chance. But also looking at this document, which is very little, couple of pages, there's also missing link to information. It refers to other documents, refers to federal documents and so forth, as far as policies and such and such. That should have been included and documented exactly what that language is. The result is there's very little information to look at. You're left with the understanding you're doing something right because according to someone reading a document somewhere else, they said that document, which is not before you, is okay. Go ahead and proceed. But I also like to also warn you too. The idea of funding dealing CARES Act funding and a policy, you should have a situation where you've set up guidelines where how the money's going out, who's approving these applications and so forth. That's not here at all. It's totally in the dark how you're running. My fear is that you adopt this, you're going to go ahead, administration or whatever, the unknown parties are going to be handling the scenario, and you should be involved with it, and the public should be aware of that process and adopted in a legal manner before a public hearing, and the public has heard and responded. But that's not what's happening here. You're going to proceed, and I'd like to footnote this. I've attended public hearings dealing with CARES Act in the Metro Borough, City of Houston, and other entities. And the same old thing is consistent. You're getting a large chunk of money, which you have approved in previous legislation, but you're adopting procedures and handling that money. I have great fear because this has happened only because of COVID, and you are showing irresponsibility in closing and how you're handling the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was on topic.
Anyone else that would like to testify regarding Resolution 20-022? Okay, Council, I don't see anyone else coming forth. Is there any objections to closing the public hearing? Okay, so the public hearing now is closed on Resolution 20-022. What is the wishes of the council?
Madam Mayor, move to approve.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 20-022. Discussion, questions, amendments to the motion? Okay, I don't see anything. Councilwoman Valerius, is that a question hand or, okay. All righty, Madam Clerk, did you, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Could we get some, input from the administration?
Sure, yeah. John, do you have some input?
Specific, or just want me to give a quick overview?
Councilman Best, do you have?
Overview, please.
Okay.
What do you
Go
say?
ahead. Overview.
Overview, okay. So we have received the money, and on July 14th, City Council set the program into place for the expenditures of the funds. So what we are doing is coming back based upon federal guidelines that we've received, and I noted the time and the dates. This is always changing. So what we did is we matched the program with the actual statements from the guidance from the Treasury. And so this is, the reason this is important, because any expenditure we made, the audit will look at this and say, is this expenditure line up with the policy approved by the City Council? So we could have went with what was done on July 14th. This is extra protection to make sure we are handling this properly. This has been reviewed by an outside auditor, has been reviewed by Attorney Gaddy, and I think it covers us and sets clear guidelines with guidelines that aren't so clear coming from the state and the feds. We're doing the best we can. There is certainly a possibility that some of this will change. We think it will get more liberal as opposed to tighter. But when we approve these expenditures, number one, we want to do this right. But number two, we've had some problems in the past with federal money where we had to reimburse the federal government. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I appreciate your consideration of this. All our future expenditures will match up against this policy. There may be an opportunity later to amend this But I think our plan is to move, based on this policy. And I think it's pretty solid.
Councilwoman Best, do you have follow-up question?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. In the policy, we have program eligible for CARES funding consists of the following, and you have 6 separate units there, and you have paragraphs explaining all but one of them. You have a nonprofit competitive grant explanation, but you don't explain the nonprofit CARES grant. And I was wondering, why is there 2 different ones, and the differences, and can one apply for both?
Go ahead, sir.
So that is going to be the administration of this, and no. We are separating the small business and a nonprofit CARES grant. We've had situations where it's maybe questionable, and we've had to apply for one or the other. We do have some large nonprofits that a lot of this is predicated on the economy, and that is one of the things that was stated right up front. You can do this for the economy of your local community, trying to preserve that. But we do have groups out there, such as Alaska Family Services, who really kind of service our community, especially with domestic violence, that sort of thing, that really falls outside the business. We are, looking at, those folks who provide meals, no cost and low cost meals, that we want to cover. And so we believe those nonprofits really are service organizations that really make our community safer and better. And like I said earlier, we're planning on coming back to do a partnership with the Alaska Housing and Finance Corporation to really kind of help those folks who are struggling to pay their rent and mortgages. So I think we're really doing what was intended for these dollars, and documenting them, and make sure we take full advantage to protect our community and help our community pass this virus.
Okay. Councilman Best, do you have further follow-up?
Just one more, and I apologize, and I'll yield to anybody else who'd like to ask a question first.
Okay, is anyone else like to ask a question? I don't see any hands, sir, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the policy portion again, do we have an amount that is associated with each of those, or are we trying to allow for maximum flexibility for the administration to, if there is a greater need in one particular area, that we'll be able to roll with the punches, so to speak?
That is a good question. And those dollar amounts were laid out on the July 14th. We are staying within those. If we have to adjust those, say for example, and I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say there's a much bigger need in our business community and the money was there, I would come back to the city council and ask for an adjustment of the program. So we're trying to stay within the guidelines that you've already approved. But if there's a need that's justifiable, I'm going to come back to the city council and ask for those changes. I just don't anticipate those today.
Okay. Okay, further questions regarding this resolution?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Could we indicate that in this document anywhere where we've already defined that amount so that it ties the two together?
We certainly can, but what we're referring to back is right in the adoption of the July 14th, 2020, you approved Resolution 20-0117. So those numbers are laid out, and if somebody could grab those to recall those, I don't have access to that right now. Is that something you could do, Ms. Clerk?
Well, if it would just be in reference to the resolution in this document, I think it kind of would kind of carry over everything.
Yes, and this is our policy, based approving the policy. The resolution's approving this policy.
Because this resolution.
I mean, what we
does
certainly
refer-
for the policy. I mean, let's do this. Let's make a motion that if you approve the policy, we will attach Resolution 20-017 or have a referral back at the end of the policy, we can put dollar amounts referred to in Resolution 20-017 on July 14th, 2020. If you make that motion to do that, I think that would be quick and easy, and we can attach that so everybody knows exactly what those dollars are. Assemblymember Best.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, I see your hand up. Did you want to be recognized?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh, go ahead.
I'm a little, never mind. What my statement was gonna be is when you read the summary statement, in particular, and then you put that together with what we heard earlier this evening from the auditors about how the monies have been, pretty widely, put out there to municipalities without as many guidelines as we would hope for. I really appreciate the policy that was developed. I think it was more than fair, and particularly with not a whole lot of guidance coming along, especially when we've already remarked that we'll be one of the first cities in the state that's gonna, be audited for the use of these funds. So, that being said, I can't see Councilman Best's reasoning about tying the two together. If anybody bothered to take down the city manager's verbiage for an amendment, as a city council member, not an assembly member, I'd be happy to put that motion forward.
Okay, so should we ask him to restate it?
Certainly.
Okay. I think she's saying you would do both of the 2015 and the 2017, right? If you're going to attach them
If you're
to.
gonna
The 2017 and the 2022.
Yes, if you're gonna
Right.
reference that, let's make sure that both are attached.
I
So
think the Deputy Mayor, the conversation here is that if we're going to attach the 017, that we should probably attach the 015 also, is a recommendation for the clerk. So, okay. Okay, so Deputy Mayor has made that as a motion to attach those two resolutions to Resolution 20-022. Is there a second? Thank you. Discussion on that amendment. Okay. Alrighty, I think then, Madam Clerk, we're ready to have you take the roll when you are
Yes,
ready.
thank you, Madam Mayor. Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Joe Valerius,
Yes.
Councilmember Julie Burbrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Amendment attaches.
Thank you.
Amendment
thank you.
passes.
So now we have before us resolution number 20-022 as amended. Further discussion on the resolution? Any other amendments? Questions to staff? Okay, I think, Madam Clerk, we're ready to take the roll on resolution 20-022 as amended.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Julie Burbrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Yes.
Councilmember Jill Valerius,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is new business. And it is Action Memorandum 20-042, authorizing the city manager to accept a site improvement plan and equipment donation from the Palmer Little League at the Harley Busby Memorial Field. What is the action of the council?
Madam Mayor, move to approve.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve Action Memorandum 20-042. Discussion, questions, amendments to the motion? Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'd just like to point to the record that one of the persons who's concerned about annexation, one of these fields improved, so we got that off the checklist
Yeah,
tonight.
right. Yeah, we'll be able to write him a note tonight and tell him we're faster action than what he thought, right? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I also just really appreciated Mr. Sutton's history of the field and his proposal, so that was fun to read.
Yeah, right.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Best.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a great improvement. I'm glad to see these fields being improved like this. My question comes to the timeliness of whether or not we approve this. I believe construction has already happened and the field is already in process. So it kind of seems a little backwards in process. Just would like to understand a little clarification on that.
Okay, yes, go ahead, sir.
I don't have much of a clarification, but as soon as we got the information, we brought it to city council.
Okay. Further questions or comments from council members? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for the roll call on Action Memorandum 20-042.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mhm.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Julie Berberich,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Jill Valerius,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is Information Memorandum number 20-008. Committee of the Whole for a general discussion regarding the Code of Ethics for the City Council. A note, action may be taken following the Committee of the Whole. It is 9:17 now. Do you want to go ahead and proceed with Committee of the Whole, or is everybody okay? Go for another half hour, an hour or so? Okay, looks like so.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Deputy Mayor?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
On the, page 117 of 160, it says the agenda of June 9th, June 23rd, July 14th, and September 22nd.
So it should be September 8th then, are you saying, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, if we're going to address it with, on tonight's agenda.
Okay. Yeah, I did.
Correction will be made.
Okay, the clerk says correction will be made, so, okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you. Okay, so do I have a motion then to go into the Committee of the Whole? Councilwoman Valerius? I'm sorry.
I'll either make the motion or second.
Okay, alrighty, I recognize you first, so I guess I'll let you do the motion, and then Councilwoman Sabrina Combs, I'll allow you to do the second, so hopefully that's acceptable to you both. Questions, comments, amendments to the motion? Yes, Councilwoman Valerius?
Oh, wait, I don't want to change the motion.
Okay.
I just have a correction to make.
Okay, sure.
So page, is this the right time for that?
No.
Let's get into the Committee of the Whole.
Let's get into the Committee of the Whole, the clerk says. Okay, okay. Alrighty, so Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for you to take the roll call for the vote to go into the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Jill Valerius,
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Yes.
Councilmember Julie Berberich,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Alrighty, Councilwoman Valerius, I'll recognize you now if you want to fill us in on where you had a question or a correction, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mhm.
Page 125.
Okay.
It refers to mayor or vice mayor, and it probably should just say deputy mayor.
Okay.
That's the term. It's in the, third
Yeah.
paragraph up from the bottom.
Okay. Yep, I see. All right. So that should say deputy. Okay. Right.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Go ahead, Councilman
I'll
Best.
second that.
Okay.
I'll second that, and if I may, if we could just have the whole document search for any place that has a vice mayor to reflect deputy mayor.
Okay.
I know that there's twice in that paragraph, but I didn't go through it line by line throughout the entire document. But
Okay.
if I could just add that to that
Oh.
amendment.
Okay, we'll be sure and make that amendment when we come out of the Committee of the Whole, but we will duly note it for now so we don't forget it, so. Okay? So, yes, Councilwoman Sabrina Combs, Yeah.
I really liked this. I thought it was really thorough and a really great draft and incorporated a lot of the things we talked about in the last couple discussions. It looks like we need to make a decision on page 121 about substantial financial interest.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Berbert?
Yeah, I did note that too, that I did a little bit of research. I don't know if this is the time for this either, but I did do a little bit of research on what some code of ethics do consider to be a substantial financial interest. Is this something that we would discuss now?
Sure.
Okay, so this is what I thought was pretty reasonable. A substantial interest defined as ownership by the trustee, his or her spouse, or his or her dependent children, whether singularly or collectively. Wording here, but basically 10% or more of any business entity, or 2, an interest having a value of $10,000 or more, or 3, the receipt of a salary, gratuity, or any other compensation or remuneration of $5,000 or more per year. So those numbers are all negotiable, but I think it sounds reasonable as far as determining what a substantial interest is. I'm willing to hear if anybody thinks those numbers are not reasonable.
Okay. Okay, I guess I think it probably should be a percentage because, 10,000 may, without divulging into everybody's, net income or something, 10,000 may mean absolutely nothing to anybody on this council, but what about future councils? Or it may be substantial right now to some people on the council. So I lean to a percentage, and I guess we would just leave it up to the council member to be honest with us regarding the fact of whether the interest was more than 10% or not. But what are some of the other feelings regarding council members? Councilwoman Sabrina Combs?
I would agree with that. 10% means a lot, or $10,000 could mean a lot to someone and little to someone else. So I think a percentage of 10% of business interest in project would be reasonable.
Right. I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the business interest because with our community grants, unless we're going to consider those to the nonprofits to be, you know, a business interest. You see what I'm saying? Councilwoman
Our
Sabrina
grants
Combs?
typically, you know, are a couple $1,000s or less, and I doubt that anyone's business interest of 10% would equate to that, especially since a nonprofit, you're not profiting off of it, so.
Yeah, because I don't know, you know, if some of the nonprofits, you know, do pay, you know, to their board members for attending meetings, you know, or, you know, if they are an officer in something, you know, they get some kind of remuneration or what, so. Further discussion,
May I
yeah.
interject one more time, I'm sorry. I believe also, even though it wasn't necessarily a financial interest, like myself during the Matsu Miners grant and Deputy Mayor Combs during something for just talking about that or making a decision that would impact that, I think we've been recusing ourselves, regardless if it's a financial interest or not, just in any type of decision-making regarding those entities.
So then there would be really sort of two conflicts of interest. One would be a conflict of just general conflict of interest, and another would be a financial one. Deputy Mayor Combs?
And what I was specifically gonna bring up is in paragraph 13, under advocacy, for example, and that might be addressing, Sabrina, that might be addressing what you and I've talked about, or you and I've recused ourselves for. But, for example, when I recused myself when the council was discussing a grant for an entity that I sit on the board of directors, and I received nothing, you know, as on that particular board. Now, that doesn't mean all boards are like that, but it,
Right.
you know, that's where it can get, I believe, blurry. The lines start getting blurred. And again, you know, I appreciate the research that Councilwoman Burbrick did, but I know I've heard in past years, I mean, there's people that they wouldn't even bat an eyelash and say that $1,000 or $2,000 is, you know, substantial. You know, that if there's any essential remuneration, you know, that there's, you know, that could be considered substantial to one person and not another. So I think that's been the sticky point. If that makes any sense to anyone. So, because I'd like to know if you know, if I'm serving on we're a small community. Most of us serve in more than one capacity, serve our community, and we need to know just exactly where the lines are drawn. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valerius?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, you know, I think what we're doing is just trying to kind of define what is substantial or not substantial. It's not going to negate anybody from, or whether it be a nonprofit or whatever, from getting something. It's just giving us a bar of what does it mean for, is this substantial, is it not substantial, so that we can all just come forward. I think people have really come forward, so it's not, I don't think it's that. I agree with you with a percentage. It's really just giving us a guide of like, what does financially, you know, substantial mean? 10%, and if we say 10%, I think that that's fine, and that's not gonna preclude any group or any entity from getting anything. That's just helps us kind of go, hey, wait, I need to say something, you know, just to let people know that, you know. So I think, I don't look at this as a detriment or hazy. To me, it really helps us just define, because people's question now is like, well, what does that mean? Because you're right, $1,000 to one person, you know, is maybe way more than somebody else, or $100 to one person. So
right.
I think just having a percentage, I agree with you. It just gives us something that people can go, yep, I need to say something, or no, I don't need to say something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any thing else on either this or anything else that's in the proposed, I guess this will be an ordinance, will it, Madam Clerk, when we adopt something, will this come back to us as an ordinance or a resolution?
That was part of the discussion for decision for the council, if they wanted that as an ordinance and incorporated in the code under that, I believe there's a conducts and rules section of the code, or if it was to be set as an policy by resolution, as some code of conducts are done, and then we can address the other side of the ordinance.
Okay.
So that is up for discussion for council to decide how they'd like to move forward.
Okay.
And unless City Attorney Gaddy has other ideas.
Okay, okay, so that will be another thing, I'll recognize the attorney, but that would be the other thing we would need to decide tonight, what form we want it to come back to us in. Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I think all the comments that I've heard are very good comments, and if I may, I'd like to take a few minutes just to give an overview of how this document evolved. And before I go into that narrative, I just want to say this is a draft. It's a starting point for the council to look at and make edits. It's a welcome and review and consider how they'd like to approach this. With regard to what format needs to be an ordinance, will it be a policy, will it be a resolution? That's really up to the council. I think I've heard some thoughts that it should be a policy rather than an ordinance or a resolution, but that's how you decide to package the vehicle is really up to you. But a little background on how this evolved. Over several meetings, various ethics products were developed and presented. And this is City of Belmont product, substantially edited, not really for substance so much, just for grammar and sentence structure. I dropped out a lot of areas that were really not relevant to the city of Palmer. So what you see is what you have. It has operational guidelines. It has some guidelines that are a little more than aspirational guidelines. And it tends to capture various activities that a municipality would engage in and identify those areas that could be of concern to the public. One area I'd like to point out is number 8 on page 120 and carry over to 121. About halfway down the left paragraph, it talks about a policy direction for items that are in conflict. And I won't read it at the same time, you can read it yourself. But it gives some exceptions that are fairly standard that you find in the State Ethics and Government Act and the Borough Code and so on. That's actually where I imported those principles from. Also, you'll see that in the document, there's conduct guidelines, civility guidelines. I think that in our society, it's really important to be civil, and that it provides professionalism, and it discusses some of those values that are really important in public activity. It talks about council conduct of the public and public meetings, the city staff, the boards, committees, and commissions, and then implement the code of ethics and conduct. It talks about those issues, and the affirmation on it, and sign it. It really is more akin to a policy directive, like a social media policy or a harassment policy that people would regularly sign after they've gone through some training. The other document on page 127 are city charter and code excerpts that I pulled out and imported into one packet that you can review. And it's interesting to compare the code sections that exist and are sprinkled throughout our code with some of the ideas in the draft conduct document. And a lot of the ideas that are in the conduct document are in the code in some form or another. I mean, not directly verbatim, but analogously. And then I also took examples of social media policies and incorporated those because that was part of the council direction. If you want to see some drafts, I think that this is really an administrative task to look at and make a recommendation to the council based on my input and city managers. If there are some changes to be made. And I want to note too that there is computer use policy in our code in Title IV, social media policy, Facebook policy. Maybe that can be supplemented to some degree. And there's also a library use policy to go to the library website. There may be some other computer policies sprinkled around in the code. I'm sorry, the city that are adopting this policy, but I didn't do an exhaustive search of that. So anyway, that's kind of a quick overview of the evolution of the document we have before you. But I really want to emphasize it's a starting point for the council to review and make edits and documents that be appropriate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Best?
I have a question of the attorney, if that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead, sir.
Under council conduct with board committees and commissions, B, limit contact with board, committee, and commission members to a question of clarification. In years past, we've encouraged members of different boards to reach out and have conversations with council members and vice versa, sharing of history and perspective, kind of where things have gone. The way that I read this is that there should only be contact when a council member is going to get clarification from an action that has already been taken from the body, but not
That would be fine. I don't know what
to
anybody
talk
else
about
is.
expressed ideas or positions of things that has not yet come before any of these boards.
Go ahead, Mike. Mike, you have some comment?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, yeah, and I wrote that in because I was following the idea of using the Belmont policy, and like I said, I dropped some out and edited other provisions of it to read a little more clearly. But the council doesn't have the appropriate provision to be in the document. It's really a matter of the council and its discretion to maintain that section or delete it. I think the area where I would be most concerned would be the quasi-judicial proceedings, and there's another provision in the document that addresses that, because we all know that there's quasi-judicial proceedings. Those are subject to due process considerations, and as a result of that, care needs to be taken with respect to the influence that body. You know, and the floor of Bravo is really up to council whether you want to leave something like that in or not. I'm not wedded to it. I'm not advocating for it. I left it in because it was in the Belmont policy, and that's what we wanted to see.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I think if I'm reading the one that Councilman Best was referring to, it's inappropriate for council member to contact a board, committee, or commission member, but it continues with saying to lobby on behalf of an individual business, et cetera, so forth. So it's like, to me, that's, you know, it's not saying no contact, it's saying no contact because you're gonna lobby, et cetera. So for what I'm reading it, I still like the sound of it.
Rather than policy, right? That, okay, this, you know, whatever they're discussing, so policy versus a clearly conflict of interest type things.
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yes, Councilman Best?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Number C.
What comes to mind, and I'm just going to use generic kind of stuff. So let's say that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to take up an action that will allow for the manufacturing of swizzle sticks. And a particular council member, is very adamant against swizzle sticks and, wants to express that, to lobby a position that one council hasn't taken a position on, so there is no official position from the body. And it is something that is going to be discussed at a, planning and zoning commission. That individual council member has not relinquished their rights to express themselves as a citizen to an individual of that body. And no official, position has been taken by council, and it's nothing that would be quasi judicial. So I just want to make sure that the council members are not losing their voice as citizens to go and to discuss positions with members of different boards.
Okay, I guess what I would interpret to be if you were this manufacturer of the swizzle sticks and then you went to, you know, the planning and zoning, that to me would be a conflict. And Councilwoman Valerius and Combs, I don't know which one of you had your hand up first. Last time I recognized Councilwoman Valerius, so I'll jump to Councilwoman Combs tonight, just to be fair, since I didn't see.
While I know we are citizens of this town, we have taken our position as an elected official, and so I disagree, and I believe that we wouldn't contact one of those members with our opinions, because ultimately, after they're done issuing their opinion, it will come to us, and we can discuss our opinions then. I think that it could come off to one of those commissioners as us trying to coerce them, and we're in a position of power, and I'm not really sure that it would be appropriate to do that. So I agree with the way that it's written.
Okay, Council, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I think it's important to look at the document as a whole, and there's a provision on page 121, number paragraph 12. I'm losing my voice, so I'm breaking up a little bit, I'm sorry. But if you have representation of private interest, and that's what that's talking about, and if you go back to the section on limiting contact with the board, I think the idea of that is to avoid undue influence or pressure on matter that could potentially come before the council at some point, and that's when your voice would be heard. So maybe there's some fine distinction issues about a more broader policy perspective, and a more narrow personal perspective, when something comes to a board or commission. And I think the purpose of 4B is to limit undue influence. Usually most of these matters are going to come before you, and the integrity of the process would theoretically need to be kept by not having theoretical undue influence on a matter that's coming before a board that's charged with making that decision.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can balance this in a number of ways. A lot of these conflict of interest, ethics issues, they really live in a very gray world. So that's a comment on that. I think would express the intent of that provision. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Valerius, do you still have a comment, or has it been covered?
It's mostly been covered, and I think it states that in that paragraph, so I agree with Councilman Carrington as well as Combs. Like, I think it's covered in here, and we do have to be careful about our influence talking to people.
Okay. So, I think this is another thing that needs to be corrected. On page 124, under C, it says the city council appoints individuals to the boards. That does not follow our code. It's the mayor appoints and confirms by the city council. So that needs to be corrected so it's in line with our code. And I don't know if it's the code or the charter where that states it, but the code. So we don't want to have a conflict there, so.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mhm.
As we go through this, we might find little mistakes that we'll need to correct. So
Sure.
thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. And I had noticed it when I read through this a couple times until just now when we were in the paragraph above it, so. I know how many times you can read through things and not catch stuff, so. Okay, so we have, according to what I'm keeping track of, we have to decide about the policy or an ordinance. We have to add the 10%. We have to change that from city council to mayor. We have to change the vice to deputy. Now, are there any other suggestions, comments, things that anybody wants to discuss? If not, then I guess we'll go out of the committee of the whole and then,
May I point out one thing?
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I
Mhm.
asked to point out one thing. Throughout this part of it, it talks about council members as one word. Our charter does call a council member as 2 words, but I want to clarify that it is used within our charter and our code council members are identifying council members as 6 council members. The mayor is a separate position. So those are council
okay.
members as a position.
Okay.
Mayor is a position, and you all make up the membership of the council. So
Okay.
I would also like that clarification be in there, other definitions be included, all that council members. If it's applicable truly to just council members, leave it in there, but add the space so that we're congruent with the charter. Or if that's intended for all members of the council, that it be changed to council as referenced in previous paragraphs 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so we could either add the word mayor to wherever there's council members, or we could just remove the word members and just put council. Did I understand you right? We have that choice?
I'd imagine so. I'd like to make sure that it's
Well, I guess.
where that intent really is.
Okay, all right. So I guess maybe when we come out of the committee of the whole, yes, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. The mayor is a member of the council, and if we get changes to council, we need to make sure that it's grammatically correct.
Yes.
When it's changed to that, and council members can be one word, but that's up to how you want to address it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I had started putting in, when I was putting this together, mayor and council, and I thought it was a little bit clumsy to do it that way in all places. So that's why I said council members, with the idea that the mayor is a member of the council, even though there are separate code provisions for the mayor and for the council.
Okay.
So like I say, it's really up to however you want to put it in. I just want to make sure it's grammatically correct or something.
Sure.
Exactly.
Change one word globally.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, and that's
Right.
Yeah, that's
So I
exactly.
guess maybe when we do the motion, when we come out of the committee on the whole, we could just leave that up to the clerk and to the attorney to be, that it was stated correctly. Or if somebody has feelings they want to be sure that it is addressed as mayor or council members, that's fine too, but, so we need to address that also. Any other questions or comments? Are we ready to come out of the committee of the whole and make a motion and put this forward to a upcoming meeting? Okay, looks like we are. So we're out of the committee of the whole. And so if I can have a motion, I don't know if, I think maybe we can do it all with the same motion, Councilwoman. Oh, no, I look and you two always put your hands up at the same time. And I never know which one to count on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to slight either one of you. I try to be fair. So.
I concede to Dr. Valerius.
Okay, all right. So Councilwoman Valerius, if if you want to go ahead.
Mayor.
Uh-huh.
I don't think either of us are feeling slighted. so-
Okay, all right. Well, I just put my head down for a minute and all of a sudden, the same two hands are up. So,
I would like to make a motion
Uh-huh.
that we move forward with this, with the changes that we discussed with the council, the vice deputy, or vice mayor, the deputy mayor, to, you read the whole list, I'm not gonna get more rattle them off. but
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we make those changes, and then, it seems to me that this would be well suited to be a policy.
okay, all right. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, so the motion before you is to accept what was presented to us tonight, to bring for, did you want to, Councilwoman Valerius, do you want to set a time certain for it to come back? Or do you want to leave that up to the clerk and the attorney?
I guess we could leave it to the clerk and the
Okay,
attorney.
okay.
I think Sooner, it'd be nice to have it before we certify another election, and then we can just start to utilize it.
Okay, okay. Alrighty, so it's my understanding, and the clerk, if you'll check with me when I list off the things I have, okay? To move forward with what has been presented to us on the Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials, that it would come back to us as a policy. Then on the top of page 121, it would be insert 10%. Let me just go through here. Okay, on page 124 on C, it would change the mayor appoints and the council confirms individuals to serve on boards, committees, and commissions. And that the city clerk and the attorney will look at the word council members and come back with us a recommendation, whether it should be mayor / and council, or whether it should just be council. And then on page 125, in any other place in the document, that the word vice would be replaced with deputy. Now, Madam Clerk, did you have any other changes that I missed? Okay.
Those look like the ones that I captured as well.
Okay, okay, Deputy Mayor Combs, I see,
I
your
have a
hand?
quick question.
Sure,
When you read that list off the first time,
uh-huh,
before we came out of committee the whole, you said that there'd be two options, one, a resolution versus an ordinance.
right,
I've got no problem with using the word policy as long as we're 100% in agreement that that means like a resolution,
Right.
something that's a working, living document, which this really needs to be that fluid.
Yeah.
Yes.
In my opinion, rather than put it in the code.
right. And I apologize to you that when we were talking about it, when all of you were talking about it, the clerk said to me, policy would be a resolution, but I don't think everybody heard that, so that's why.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, so that's why I jumped to that. So my apologies for not making that more clear to you. Okay, further discussion. And of course, when it comes back to us, we can, continue to look at it or make changes or whatever. This isn't, now set in stone, so. All righty. Yes, clerk, city clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate you letting me provide one more clarification here that I really do want to clarify. I know that it was requested to come back before election. We only have one meeting for that to happen.
Yeah,
So it's not going to happen.
okay.
I say that, I don't want to disappoint, but this coming back for the September 22nd meeting, as we know that
We have September
It's very
22nd is already
correct.
really full.
it is
Yeah.
very full. That would be an aggressive response time. So
Uh-huh.
we are looking, really no earlier than October 13th.
Okay. All right.
And
And it's my,
it's still going to be pretty hard with the election coming in with getting time in.
Right, because that would be the day after you certify the election. Yeah.
Yes, Madam
So,
Mayor.
I guess my understanding would be, once we adopt this, that everybody that currently serves would have to sign it. I mean, I don't think it's just pertains to new people. So, does that take care of your concern, Councilwoman Valerius? Yeah, okay, I see it. I think it's a thumb before the nose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for that.
Thank you. Okay. Alrighty, so I think we're ready then for the vote on the motion.
Yes.
As long as you and I agree on what our interpretation.
That's right, the 5 parts to this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For a vote, Councilmember Jill Valerius,
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs,
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Best,
Yes.
Councilmember Julie Berbrick,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs,
Yes.
Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is record of items placed on the table. Madam Clerk, do we have some items?
We had written testimony, and if I may address to the email being sent, I did restart my computer in my office, so hopefully that email did get delivered.
Okay.
So if it had
Okay,
not,
I see
we
a
got
thumbs up.
yay, the restart happened. So it has
Good.
now been delivered to everyone
Okay.
as hard copies are in the back.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is audience participation. Anyone can address the council on any item, whether it was on the agenda or not. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself and 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Audience participation is now open.
Huh?
I thought I saw someone.
Yeah, go ahead. We refer to somebody walking the building.
Okay, there was someone. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Matsu Valley. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, a decision made by the governing body is more like the public interest. As I noted in the previous meetings, the borough is a second-class power, which they cannot handle the health issues like COVID outside of their own buildings. So what has happened is the school district has followed a mask policy that they can do in their buildings. And the school district, at the last school board meeting, everyone was wearing face masks. That was great. Everyone was, public and all. But there was a joint school board meeting today and the assembly, 6 o'clock, in the assembly chambers. One member of the assembly was wearing a mask. One member of the school board was wearing a mask, and the rest of those membership was not wearing a mask. So I guess when they walk out of the school board meetings and go over to the assembly, they don't wear masks. But then what am I saying right here? Who's wearing face coverings? Consistently, I only saw 2 members of the public consistently throughout the meeting, and the police chief who just walked out wearing a face covering consistently, but everyone else was having it on and off. And then one of the doors here was closed about 9:37, and you need air coming in and out of the meetings. I did notice a scenario of more chairs in this room. Small room, now 27 chairs. Oh, we need room for more people. But where's the respect for the safety of the people? I pleaded with you to have it in a different location, but that wouldn't answer. The letters and communications that you had read at this meeting, that's not on the website. Maybe you got copies, but you have to be physically in this room at this meeting to see copies of those that are going to be read, or hear it on Radio Free Palmer to be. That's a scenario. Where's the connection with the people? But you discuss annexation, and you refuse to deal with a health issue, which you do have powers to deal with. The last meeting I pleaded with you to bring out the COVID issue and the mask wearing, but one member of the council, after my comments, said that was not willing to go further and bring this thing out. City Council Houston, they were silent on the issue. So what do we have? No, I think it was Houston that was really saying something. I think you were silent on it all. But the fact is, you're not showing respect. You award funds are going to the state fair and they don't care about masks. And it's a wild, wild west more and more. There is more people, thank God, to people like Fred Meyer's companies. Mass majority, 70 or 80% of people going into Fred Meyer's now in Palmer, not Wasilla, are wearing masks. Because now that minority is saying we don't want to be left out. But you're not showing as an example, and you continue looking for that money. But all due respect, nothing's changed, and we're moving into winter. And are you going to have those doors open with flu coming out and with COVID? Are you going to have those doors? I doubt it. It's going to be more not safe. Thank you very much, with all due respect.
Anyone else that would like to address the council on any matter? Okay, seeing no one, audience participation is now closed. So I'll move to council comments. And let's see, Deputy Mayor, I see you first up in the left-hand corner. Do you have some comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good work this evening. I would like to compliment the city manager. His report was extremely welcome, and as far as I'm concerned, to be where he's at with the departments on budgets at this kind of time in the year, and with, you know, we have to face it, COVID has added a lot of different tasks to everybody's job, so really appreciate that, and do appreciate the way that they're handling the COVID CARES Act funds. So, and kudos to the city clerk. There has been, and we're not going to be able to ever get it out 100%, but there's been a real good coverage about the election that's coming, and I share her excitement about the fact that we're going to have early voting in Palmer on a Saturday prior to the election day itself, because I think a lot of folks will appreciate that particular fact. So other than that, good meeting, and let's cross our fingers that you know, it doesn't get too cold at nights yet. So thank you.
Councilwoman Valerius, you're below there, so I'm going to jump down to you. Do you have comments?
Madam Mayor, thank you for bringing back the folks from Agnew Beck this evening. That was a really nice presentation to hear from them. And thanks to Gina and to John, our city manager, for doing a great job with all things COVID and budget and all of those things. So otherwise, thank you for the discussion tonight. Hope everybody has a great week.
And Councilwoman Combs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really excited that we're moving forward on this code of ethics and working together really well on that. Super glad that we got to hear more from Agnew Beck. It's a long road ahead with annexation, but I think we can navigate it together and have some really good community discussions. Big shout out to Dave Sutton and the rest of the Palmer Little League Board for their hard work on the Busby field. Just a reminder that Palmer Little League is a 100% volunteer run organization, and these guys are out there on their time away from work, making this field look nice and honoring its origins here in Palmer. Big thank you to Gina and her staff for the audit presentation today. That was really great to hear that we're being good stewards with our city's money. And thank you to Mr. Moosey for all of the hard work on the CARES Act funding. I can look out my window right here and see your future house, so it's coming along quickly. So excited to have you as a Palmer resident soon.
Good, I'll count on you for security.
Councilwoman Berberick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just concur with all the folks here that staff has done a great job. Shout out to Gina, because this is my second year on the council and the second year of hearing that she's doing a great job. Mr. Musi as well for all of your hard work with the CARES Act. I know it's uncharted territory and you're just trying to get it figured out. I think you're doing a great job. And also Norma with the election. I'm sure you're excited that we're finally getting there, and I know that that's a lot of work for you too, but thank you for all the hard work that you do. I also think tonight was a good meeting. I really appreciated the discussion tonight, and I'm very happy about moving forward on the code of ethics, and thank everybody for their thoughts on that.
Okay, Councilman Carrington?
Also like to echo the great thanks for the staff and the presentations on a fairly boring audit, which is, that's good. It means we're doing fairly well, and to Mr. Musi and all his work with the CARES and Gina and trying to keep track of all that. And I don't know, I still am of the opinion that we're going to read emails into the record. I think there should be a supplement on the website. That's just my comment.
Okay. I guess my question only is, what is the difference between someone personally testifying and an email being written? Because we don't put, Joe Blow comes here and testifies for or against something. That just goes into the record and there isn't. So, I don't want to make a big thing out of this, but I don't see the difference between reading them into the record versus somebody that comes and talks. Or maybe we should put it all out there. I don't know. Something for a future discussion, I think. You see what I'm saying, Councilman Carrington? Okay. Right? I mean, it wouldn't seem like to me we should give weight to one versus the other. Okay. Councilman Best, do you have some comments? And I think you probably have something you want to ask for some consideration.
For consideration?
Yeah, you had asked inappropriately to ask the attorney to give us an opinion on the vote.
For the reminder, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to ask for council support to get clarification from the attorney as to processes within the annexation petition, whether or not we can request of the boundary commission to proceed forward as a vote of the individual entities, not just whether it's something later on that LBC would recommend.
Okay. Is there support?
And Madam Mayor, I would be happy to support that.
Okay. All right. Okay. All righty. Then do you have any other comments, Councilman Best?
No, ma'am. I think it was all good discussion tonight. Thank you much.
Okay. Alrighty, I agree with all of you. We have good work, we have good administration, and let's go home.